man's soul, and that not because of the growth in his wealth money is money and no more but because he will feel that everything is the work of his own hands, and that he has been the cause of everything, and its creator, and that from him, as from a magician, there has flowed bounty and goodness for all. In what other calling will you find such delights in prospect?" As he spoke, Kostanzhoglo raised his face, and it became clear that the wrinkles had fled from it, and that, like the Tsar on the solemn day of his crowning, Kostanzhoglo's whole form was diffusing light, and his features had in them a gentle radiance. "In all the world," he repeated, "you will find no joys like these, for herein man imitates the God who projected creation as his supreme happiness, and now demands of man that he, too, should act as the creator of prosperity. Yet there are folk who call such functions tedious." Kostanzhoglo's mellifluous periods fell upon Chichikov's ear like the notes of a bird of paradise. From time to time he gulped, and his softened eyes expressed the pleasure which it gave him to listen. "Constantine, it is time to leave the table," said the lady of the house, rising from her seat. Every one followed her example, and Chichikov once again acted as his hostess' escort, although with less dexterity of deportment than before, owing to the fact that this time his thoughts were occupied with more essential matters of procedure. "In spite of what you say," remarked Platon as he walked behind the pair, "I, for my part, find these things wearisome." But the master of the house paid no attention to his remark, for he was reflecting that his guest was no fool, but a man of serious thought and speech who did not take things lightly; and, with the thought, Kostanzhoglo grew lighter in soul, as though he had warmed himself with his own words, and were exulting in the fact that he had found someone capable of listening to good advice. When they had settled themselves in the cosy, candle-lighted drawing-room, with its balcony and the glass door opening out into the garden, a door through which the stars could be seen glittering amid the slumbering tops of the trees, Chichikov felt more comfortable than he had done for many a day past. It was as though, after long journeying, his own roof-tree had received him once more, had received him when his quest had been accomplished, when all that he wished for had been gained, when his travelling-staff had been laid aside with the words, "It is finished." And of this seductive frame of mind the true source had been the eloquent discourse of his hospitable host. Yes, for every man there exist certain things which, instantly that they are said, seem to touch him more closely, more intimately, than anything has done before. Nor is it an uncommon occurrence that in the most unexpected fashion, and in the most retired of retreats, one will suddenly come face to face with a man whose burning periods will lead one to forget oneself, and the tracklessness of the route, and the discomfort of one's nightly halting places, and the futility of crazes, and the falseness of tricks by which one human being deceives another. And at once there will become engraven upon one's memory, vividly and for all time, the evening thus spent, and of that evening one's remembrance will hold true, both as to who was present, and where each such person sat, and what he or she was wearing, and what the walls and the stove and other trifling features of the room looked like. In the same way did Chichikov note each detail that evening, both the appointments of the agreeable but not luxuriously furnished room, and the good-humoured expression which reigned on the face of the thoughtful host, and the design of the curtains, and the amber-mounted pipe smoked by Platon, and the way in which he kept puffing smoke into the fat jowl of the dog Yarb, and the sneeze which, on each such occasion, Yarb vented, and the laughter of the pleasant-faced hostess, though always followed by the words, "Pray do not tease him any more," and the cheerful candlelight, and the cricket chirping in a corner, and the glass door, and the spring night which, laying its elbows upon the tree-tops, and spangled with stars, and vocal with the nightingales which were pouring forth warbled ditties from the recesses of the foliage, kept glancing through the door and regarding the company within. "How it delights me to hear your words, good Constantine Thedorovitch," said Chichikov. "Indeed, nowhere in Russia have I met with a man of equal intellect." Kostanzhoglo smiled, while realizing that the compliment was scarcely deserved. "If you want a man of genuine intellect," he said, "I can tell you of one. He is a man whose boot soles are worth more than my whole body." "Who may he be?" asked Chichikov in astonishment. "Murazov, our local Commissioner of Taxes." "Ah, I've heard of him before," remarked Chichikov. "He is a man who, were he not the director of an estate, might well be a director of the Empire; and were the Empire under my direction, I should at once appoint him my Minister of Finance." "I have heard tales beyond belief concerning him. For instance, that he has acquired 10,000,000 roubles." "10? More than 40. Soon half Russia will be in his hands." "You don't say so!" cried Chichikov in amazement. "Yes, certainly. The man who has only 100,000 roubles to work with grows rich but slowly, whereas he who has millions at his disposal can operate over a greater radius, and so back whatsoever he undertakes with twice or thrice the money which can be brought against him. Consequently his field becomes so spacious that he ends by having no rivals. Yes, no one can compete with him, and, whatsoever price he may fix for a given commodity, at that price it will have to remain, nor will any man be able to outbid it." "My God!" muttered Chichikov, crossing himself, and staring at Kostanzhoglo with his breath catching in his throat. "The mind cannot grasp it. It petrifies one's thoughts with awe. You see folk marvelling at what science has achieved in the matter of investigating the habits of cowbugs, but to me it is a far more marvellous thing that in the hands of a single mortal there can become accumulated such gigantic sums of money. But may I ask whether the great fortune of which you speak has been acquired through honest means?" "Yes, through means of the most irreproachable kind, through the most honourable of methods." "Yet so improbable does it seem that I can scarcely believe it. Thousands I could understand, but millions!" "On the contrary, to make thousands honestly is a far more difficult matter than to make millions. Millions are easily come by, for a millionaire has no need to resort to crooked ways; the way lies straight before him, and he needs but to annex whatsoever he comes across. No rival will spring up to oppose him, for no rival will be sufficiently strong, and since the millionaire can operate over an extensive radius, he can bring, as I have said, 2 or 3 roubles to bear upon any one else's one. Consequently, what interest will he derive from 1,000 roubles? Why, 10 or 20 per cent. At the least. And it is beyond measure marvellous that the whole should have started from a single kopeck. Had it started otherwise, the thing could never have been done at all. Such is the normal course. He who is born with thousands and is brought up to thousands will never acquire a single kopeck more, for he will have been set up with the amenities of life in advance, and so never come to stand in need of anything. It is necessary to begin from the beginning rather than from the middle, from a kopeck rather than from a rouble, from the bottom rather than from the top, for only thus will a man get to know the men and conditions among which his career will have to be carved. That is to say, through encountering the rough and the tumble of life, and through learning that every kopeck has to be beaten out with a 3-kopeck nail, and through worsting knave after knave, he will acquire such a degree of perspicuity and wariness that he will err in nothing which he may tackle, and never come to ruin. Believe me, it is so. The beginning and not the middle is the right starting point. No one who comes to me and says, 'Give me 100,000 roubles and I will grow rich in no time,' do I believe, for he is likely to meet with failure rather than with the success of which he is so assured. 'Tis with a kopeck, and with a kopeck only, that a man must begin." "If that is so, I shall grow rich," said Chichikov, involuntarily remembering the dead souls, "for of a surety I began with nothing." "Constantine, pray allow Paul Ivanovitch to retire to rest," put in the lady of the house. "It is high time, and I am sure you have talked enough." "Yes, beyond a doubt you will grow rich," continued Kostanzhoglo, without heeding his wife, "for towards you there will run rivers and rivers of gold, until you will not know what to do with all your gains." As though spellbound, Chichikov sat in an aureate world of ever-growing dreams and fantasies. All his thoughts were in a whirl, and on a carpet of future wealth his tumultuous imagination was weaving golden patterns, while ever in his ears were ringing the words, "Towards you there will run rivers and rivers of gold." "Really, Constantine, do allow Paul Ivanovitch to go to bed." "What on earth is the matter?" retorted the master of the household.